I have a confession. I have multiple Instagram accounts, multiple Facebook accounts, a LinkedIn account, and a TikTok account, which all see far, far too much of my spare free time, even some of my working time. But don't tell my boss, who's me. But I spend more time than I'd care to admit posting and thinking about it. Well, not even posting. I spend time scrolling. I spend time scrolling and saving and looking what other people are doing, and air quotes here for everyone that's listening, researching the things that I think would be helpful, that I want to post, etc., etc. And the thing that I struggle with social media the most, I think, is the comparison trap. And I know that lots and lots of people will resonate with this a lot. But it is essentially, I think, the comparison trap that we fall into that is the most damaging thing about social media and on our psyches, really. I think that's why it is the main thing. I think it's the main issue behind sort of the wider issue that we have with socials. And what's so frustrating is we know it's a problem. We know that we do it. And yet, with all the best intentions, I certainly can't seem to call myself out in real time as it's happening. I know that I'm going to compare myself and my business and everything that I'm doing the moment I go on one of these apps, but I still can't seem to stop that spiral happening as soon as I see it all, really, which is really frustrating, but something that I think, again, it's like a little muscle. If we start flexing it and we start realising and calling ourselves out in the moment, then we might be able to help. It's something that I have looked into quite a bit because it's something that I remember struggling with for my entire time on socials, really. I am a 99 child, so I got Instagram at the age of, I think, 13 or 14, like as it was starting to be a really big thing. I remember signing up on a school trip to Spain, funnily enough, because my classmates wanted to tag me in some photos that we'd taken. And it was a really pivotal time. I think that before then, obviously, I hadn't had social media. My parents were sticklers, and I wasn't allowed a Facebook account until I was 13 because those were the guidelines. So Instagram, social media really came onto my radar at the age of about 13, 14. And I do remember vividly this sudden comparison to what everyone else was posting and the anxiety of posting and who was going to like what you were doing. And it suddenly felt like a whole different arena that I was very, very ill-equipped to deal with. So I figured if I did some research and I tried to understand why it makes me spiral so much and why it is something that my brain can't seem to overwrite. It can't seem to understand what it's seeing and remove itself. It seems to get really caught up in it really, really quickly, essentially. So I've been looking into it, so I thought I'd share. But if you're anything like me, the comparison starts, probably before you've even had your first sip of coffee. If you open your phone, immediately you are exposed to everyone else's curated life. And again, as we've said, the worst part is rationally, you know that that's not even real. It's stuff that they are choosing to post. It's things that they are choosing to highlight. As my friend that works in social media says, it's all bollocks. But your brain cannot tell that. And why it hits even harder at the moment is that, as we spoke about last week, we're so driven by our biological hardware. Your biological hardware does not know what's happening. As a human being, you're just driven to compare and analyze and pit yourself in and amongst what you are seeing, which isn't helpful when we live our lives online. So, to wind it back again, human beings have always compared. They will always compare. Again, as we said, I don't know, last week, a couple of weeks ago, that sense of comparison and that sense of safety and security, you compare, because if you did things that were outside your comfort zone or you did things that you were different, there was a real risk that it would get you killed. Which again, it's not the same now, but back then it did make sense. So it does make sense. It did make sense back then to compare yourself to everyone around you, to have some sort of sociological yardstick that you could use to compare how well you were doing. I think we've spoken about it before, but Dunbar's magical number of 150 people that you could have and maintain relationships with is about 150 people. And those 150 people before were your village. Now, I don't know about you. I think I follow upwards of 1,000 people on my business Instagram and upward of about 400 people on my personal account, which I know relatively are probably quite small numbers. And even that still feels like I'm being absolutely bombarded with everyone's shit, which is why I try not to go on it. And then I do go on it and we end up back in the spiral, as see my rant 2 minutes ago. And everyone is, especially on my business account, is in like a launch era. Everyone is really excited and really showing the best parts of themselves. They're really showing the best parts of themselves, which is absolutely what social media is meant to be for, you know, like it is, you're supposed to be. I don't know if you are supposed to be. We can get into the whole toxic vulnerability thing at the minute, because that was really interesting, that sort of, to watch that play out in real time. Everyone was like, oh, we want more authenticity, we want people to be more raw, more authentic, but not like that. Don't show yourself crying or being vulnerable like that, because we don't want to see that. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so to reframe, because we've gone slightly off tangent, in 2026, everyone on LinkedIn is posting how excited they are and how thrilled they are to announce. You have to take a drink every time you see that on your feed, but probably not if it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's launching something. Everyone's got a podcast. Humble flex, I know. Everyone's got a course, a Substack, a side hustle. We're dealing with AI now as well in advertising. And influencers using AI to promote things. So half the shit we're seeing isn't even real anymore. And the infinite scroll means that it's never done. The comparison never stops, because you're never finished with the scroll. There's no end in sight to give your nervous system a break. And again, the cruel twist comes in where you know that you're comparing yourself to someone. You're comparing your whole entire life, because you live in your brain. You're comparing every single second of every single day, living and being you, to a photo that someone, or a video or a reel or a story or whatever that someone has set up, edited, probably retaken a few times, tweaked, filtered, and then chosen to post. And you know that you're doing it, you know that you're comparing, and yet you can't stop. So you're not comparing yourself to other people, you're comparing yourself to the perception of someone else, which is, I think, where the danger lies. To make this slightly more, what's the word I'm looking for? To make this slightly more reliable, so it's not just me wittering on about things that I'm thinking. Leon Festinger coined the social comparison theory in 1954. So in terms of human psychology, not too long ago, not too recently. And it was a foundational psychological theory that we have developed a drive to evaluate ourselves. Which I think we know instinctively that we are constantly looking around for reassurance, for validation, whatever it is, wherever it is. I think we are all aware, as herd, like pack creatures, community-driven beings, that we like to know where we fit and why we fit. That's all very human of us. And to draw a little bit on the conversation we had about the Great Scattering, when all of those tangible, objective milestones are removed, what are you comparing to and against? who are you comparing to and against? Because it's not the 150 people that used to be in your village. It's now the 1,000 people, half of which are probably influencers or celebrities or people that, you know, I don't want to say we're never gonna be like those people, because fuck it, we can do whatever we want, be whoever we want. But realistically, I'm never gonna have as much money as Kim K, which isn't an issue per se. But there's no point me comparing myself to her, because we live in completely different worlds. So these parasocial relationships we've developed with people online are really detrimental to us, because our human nature and human instinct to compare suddenly puts us in camp with them rather than the people that we could actually have compared ourselves to previously. We're completely skewed again. And because the societal yardstick our parents, our grandparents used to be measured against has disappeared for our generation, we're left floating and kind of comparing ourselves to everyone all the time about everything, which is really tricky, which then I think also means that your internal compass of whether you're doing well or not is completely skewed, because you suddenly lose that sort of sense of direction. You lose that sense of knowing where you're going and having faith in where you're going and what you're doing. So it is worth mentioning at this point as well that there are two different types of comparison. There is upward comparison, which is comparing yourself to people that you would deem to be above you, which typically obviously makes you feel pretty crappy about yourself. And then downward comparison, which is you comparing yourself to people, whether you are doing it intentionally or not, you deem to be below you. And that makes you feel better temporarily, I think. But again, because actually typically none of the actions and nothing that they're doing affects you and what you're doing, I think it's a pretty short-lived satisfaction of, oh yeah, I'm doing better than them. Oh yeah, like I'm doing better than them, I'm achieving more than them. Typically it doesn't actually affect you, so you don't feel great after doing it. But social media is upward comparison, like on steroids. It's not just bumping into mum's friend and mum's friend bragging about, you know, how well little Timmy's doing, even though you kind of know that little Timmy's, you know, not doing that great. It's upward comparison on steroids, because again, you're not even comparing yourself to people that you know. So how on earth would you know if what they just posted, you know, the incredible holiday that they've just had, that they were actually miserable the entire time for, that car that they've just bought, you know, probably on finance, the house that they've just purchased, mum and dad probably helped out a little bit. You know, you don't see the full picture. You don't have the full context of these highlighted social media posts, which means comparing your whole self and your whole brain function and everything to just something that you see isn't real. You are, comparing to a perception of someone, which is very tricky. And again, as we spoke about the other week, social media usage and high usage specifically is linked very highly to additional anxiety, additional depression, body image issues, especially in teenage girls. And it's devastating. And I mean, there's loads of talk at the minute, isn't there, actually, about banning social media for under 16. So I'll be really interested to watch that conversation sort of play out within government at the moment, because I can absolutely see both sides to it. And I wonder how the argument is going to go. I have pretty strong feelings both ways, to be honest with you. So I will be interested in seeing how that plays out. But I think another point of this is to say that I struggle with this as much as the next person. You know, I struggle with it as much as anyone. I have had to take Facebook off my phone. I only now use it on my laptop when I need to. The same with TikTok. I've taken that off my phone. Instagram I do obviously still have on my phone, because I have to post things from my phone on my Instagram to run my business, which I wish I didn't, but I do. So LinkedIn as well. I think LinkedIn is the worst for me, because this is, you know, overshare 101, but I tie my sense of self to my work so intrinsically. which we can unpack in a completely different episode if we need to. But to see everyone else's career successes and business successes, if I'm having a bit of a crappy day, a bit of a crappy week, I find that to be pretty detrimental to my internal compass and I don't know what the word is, but it absolutely, like, LinkedIn is the one I think that makes me spiral the quickest. So I have to be very mindful of it when I use it. Again, I'm absolutely not sitting here telling you what to do at all, because if I can't even follow my own advice, you certainly shouldn't listen to me either. But, when I was doing the research for this episode, it did say, well, when I was doing the research for the episode, it obviously comes to the conclusion that you need to audit your followers and compare yourself to yourself, and that jealousy is just data. So if you genuinely want something that someone else has, use it as real data and use it as like that's where I'm going, that's what I want. I think that's the only bit of genuine advice that I could take away from this. If it kind of makes you, the scroll makes you spiral and, oh my God, my life's falling apart, I can guarantee you it isn't. Just take a deep breath, have a cup of tea. She says to herself at fucking, what time is it? Like 8:30 in the morning. But yeah, the bits of tangible advice I stumbled upon obviously were pretty wank, to be honest with you, because auditing your followers and putting those blockers in place, it works, but I don't think anyone's going to do it, I think is the thing. And we have to be self-aware enough to know that this advice does work, but we're not going to do it. Or we are going to do it, but it just takes that extra bit of rewiring and that extra bit of, oh no, this is what's happening. Oh no, this is why I'm feeling that way, in order to process it, rather than just like, I'm not going to do it. Because I do know, if I compared myself to Vicky from 2 years ago, she would not believe where we are now. She would not. The life that I'm living now, she wouldn't have even thought was possible, which is a really exciting thought. And it makes me feel really proud that I've done the things I've done and achieved the things that I've achieved. And that is something that I have to remind myself of constantly, and that I'm not where I want to be yet, and I'm getting there, essentially, is the thing. So yeah, wanky advice, but compare yourself to yourself rather than comparing yourself to something you haven't got a clue of the authenticity of, I think really is where I'm going to leave you this week. I'm sorry that felt a little bit wanky in the end. But in summary, your brain is always going to compare because it keeps you safe. Upward comparison isn't ideal because you don't know where that post is coming from, and compare yourself to yourself and yourself alone, because that is the only comparison I think that is beneficial, really. I'll leave you with that.